Hi everyone, I'm Rina, and I am very excited to talk to you about a new computational thinking assessment tool that I have been working on as part of my PhD. And my PhD focuses on the development, design, and evaluation of this tool. And so today I'll be talking about the development and design aspect, and I'll focus on the evaluation part with the findings section. And these studies are the studies that I'm presenting today are quite preliminary, but hopefully can provide some support for the main study in terms of the project. So the research project is basically motivated by two observations in the CITI literature, particularly in regards to CT assessment. So the first being the paucity of CT assessment tools available for teachers as well as for students, who has been identified as a crucial factor that really hinders the promotion of CT in the classroom. And relatedly, which moves to the second point, is that the majority of the existing and available CT assessment didn't really follow the design, development, or evaluation based on the principles that guide educational and psychological testing, or what I would call or refer to as psychometrically sound methods. So this is where I hope my contribution could come in. A psychometrically sound assessment, I believe, is quite fundamental and essential to us being able to objectively and accurately assess students' latent or hidden CT abilities, skills, or competencies. So these two factors together are really the driving force of my research. So to address these issues, my research focuses on a new CT assessment tool called Computational Thinking Challenge, or CTC. In a nutshell, this includes developing a computerized competency-based assessment and the evaluation of its reliability, validity, and psychometric properties. And by psychometric properties, I really just mean how good each item is, looking at this relation to the whole set of the items, as well as in relation to the student latent ability in CT. And I don't really want to use the word ability because this is really about competency. So a little bit about CTC before we move on to talking about the results. So CTC was designed to be a computerized task. So there are a few benefits that we know from the literature of a computer-based assessment. And some of them include it being time and cost efficient. It helps us generate automated personalized reports. So this is really helpful for the students. It's accurate in scoring. It could integrate response time to better assess processing speed and efficiency while the students are completing the tasks. It allows different forms of items. So moving from traditional multiple choice questions to some more interactive questions that students can participate in. It was also designed to be a competency-based assessment. So when measuring competency, we usually avoid using just a single isolated performance, but instead, we really want to integrate a range of situations that reflect the competency. So in this case, it's CT. So when measuring CT, we have integrated programming tasks and problem-solving tasks. Programming tasks are measured using Parsons problems. There are a few interesting studies in the last decade that really draw on the benefits of using Parsons problems, including improving learning efficiency. For novels, programmers is more sensitive to measuring students' learning gains. In general, it's more motivating and enjoyable to complete for the students. And it really increases students' future interest in computing activities. Some of these papers have been elaborated by Erickson, Foley, and Rich. So if you want to look more into Parsons problems, you can go back and refer to these scholars. So these items are quite good in evaluating algorithms and debugging skills. As for the problem-solving tasks in CTC, we're using ill-defined problems that they are underpinned by computing principles. And these are basically items that involve multiple competing approaches and solutions, requiring students to use abstraction, problem decomposition, and generalization to arrive at the best approach, so the best answer. So in terms of item design, Parsons problems are interactive. They ask learners to rearrange fragments of code in one order to formulate a correct code order to a programming problem. And problem-solving questions are basically multiple choice. In terms of assessing, a hybrid approach is used here. And by hybrid approach, I really just mean extracting the useful features of summative and formative assessments. So for the summative part, it's really useful to just get a sum score for either if you're researcher or teachers or educators who are looking at students' progress. So that is a nice summary of how your students are progressing in CT. But we really just want to focus on the formative aspect, which is for the students and how they can get the most out of this assessment. And so thinking about that, we developed a automated personalized report based on how they perform. And the report really aims to facilitate based on meaningful feedback and thinking points to facilitate their metacognitive skills and deeper learning strategies for CT development. There are quite a few objectives in terms of what CTC aims to do. It aims to allow students to solve novel, authentic, and real-world CT problems in a neutral context. And Alison has talked a little bit about it this morning. And the idea really aligns with her that it is important for students to be solving real-world problems that are novel, that are not entirely familiarized in their knowledge base. The second objective is to really allow them to identify their strengths. And I don't want to use the word weakness because this is not an assessment that focuses on what people cannot do. And we know CT is a skill that could be practiced and improved upon. So we really want to draw on those improvement areas and how they can actually practice CT in their day-to-day lives. The third objective being to get students familiarized with CT concepts and usage through the completion of this task. So let's talk a little bit about the actual study. So it is a 3-stage study, and stage 1 looks at the internal consistency, reliability. Stage 2 compares the reliability between a computer-based and a paper-based version. And this is quite important to justify the assessment being computer-based. So this is where we're evaluating whether it is indeed a better version. In stage 3, we're looking at the user experience. So how students experience when they were completing the task, because the assessment was designed for students. So it is quite important for us to know whether they understood the items, how difficult they found the items, and finally, how motivating and enjoyable the items or the assessment is. In terms of the sample, we had 19 children, ages range from 14.9 to 16.2 in stage 1, 89% being males. In stage 2, we had 24 children, ages range from 16.9 to 18.4, 87.5 being males. It looks like there is quite a prevalent gender imbalance in this sample size. However, I guess it's just, it reflects what the Royal Society has published in, I think in 2017 about the gender imbalance issue in computing education. But on the more hopeful note, in the main study, we actually found many more females participating than in this pilot study. So that's a bit more hopeful. So in terms of results, looking at reliability, we used Cobas alpha. When we analyze and interpret Cobas alpha, anything below 0.5 we consider unacceptable, 0.6 to 0.5 to 0.6 as poor, 0.6 to 0.7 as acceptable, and anything above 0.7 we consider good, and anything above 0.9 we consider excellent. So in stage 1, the reliability results is at 0.79, so it's quite a good reliability in stage 1. In stage 2, again, we're comparing the paper-based version versus the computer-based version. And as you can see in that table, the computer-based version has achieved a much higher reliability at 0.78 versus 0.59 in the paper-based version. So we know that the computer-based version of the task is indeed more reliable and valid way to measure CT in this assessment. In stage 3, we're interested to see how students find the assessment, and half of the participants found the items to be neither easy nor difficult. That's 52.2%. Majority of them understood the questions quite well. That's 47.8%. And regarding the motivational aspect, almost half of the participants found CTC to be moderately stimulating and interesting and fun. That's the 47.8%, and enjoy CTC a little to moderate extent. That's 30.4% each, which is ideal, because ideally we don't want students to be overly excited about the challenge nor reluctant to participate. So this is just the result that we're hoping for. We did conduct several other exploratory analyses that are not included in the abstract that I could probably talk a little bit about. So overall, we did not find age to be a predictor of CT performance, but we did find a marginal significant effect of the previous coding experience on the overall performance. Now, there's a question about age, because this assessment is available for 14 to 18 years old. And so there might be some issues with floor and ceiling effect. So floor effect happens when the items are too difficult that low scoring participants cannot get any accurate answers. And ceiling effect happens when items are too easy, such that the majority of the participants obtain a near maximum or maximum scores. We did not find it to be the case. In fact, the mean score is quite centrally located. So that really suggests to us that the items are not extremely easy nor difficult. And this finding actually aligns with how the students interpret the assessment itself. So a little bit about what's going on at the moment. So at the moment, the main study is in process. There's more than 20 UK schools have already been participating. And I want to thank you, all the teachers out there who have participated in this study. You have been immensely helpful. So with a larger sample size, aiming at 1,000, we're going to use a model called item response theory. And this is basically a psychometric model that is specified by a mathematical function that really describes the relationship between the probability of a response and the CT proficiency or competency here in this assessment on a single continuum. So it's quite a robust model in terms of addressing some questions regarding test development, such as how difficult or discriminative is each item, how much information does CTC provide over the range of CT competency, and how does each item contribute to the test information. So all these questions could be addressed by this model. However, when considering models such as IRT, we're trying to find the best model that explains the data. We're not learning from the data itself. And with a large sample size, we can actually learn a lot from the students' data. So educational data mining would be the second stage after CTC is validated and proven reliable. Using educational data mining techniques, we can actually explore and investigate emerging performance patterns within the data. And so rather than assuming or making assumptions in a field that doesn't really have a large knowledge base with enough empirical knowledge and evidence, it's quite a good alternative way to learn about CT as well as how student performs in an CT assessment. And so hopefully learning from the student data, we could inform future theoretical models and contribute more to the knowledge base in terms of CT. So at this point, if you're a teacher and you have a moment or two, please scan the QR code on the top right-hand side that says teacher survey. It would be immensely helpful for researchers like myself to understand your opinions about CT and how you think it's best to understand CT in the measurement context for your student. And this is quite important because I feel that the way we have been conceptualizing CT as a construct in the literature has been voices of academics and scholars, and that is really valuable. But I think what's more valuable is that researchers and teachers come together to understand each other. So your voices are quite important to us. So if you have a moment, please scan the survey and complete a survey for us. If you think your students are going to be interested in the task itself, you can scan the QR code below that says CTC participation. And that's all for me today, and I'm happy to answer some questions.